A good Erev Shabbos. Shabbat Chazak means a Shabbat of strength. We're supposed to take strength from this occasion, like this Shabbat 5 times a year, when we complete a book of the Chumash, a book of the Torah, and we stand together for the last few psukim, the last few verses, and we cry out together, Chazak, Chazak, v'nis chazek. Strength, may we be strengthened. Completion of something important. And of course, moving on to the next important thing, that's what gives us chizuk, strength. This week in Parshat Bechukosai, we also read a series of curses. We always read this a week or two before Shavuos. The idea, of course, is that the Torah is about love. Someone just published a book about that. The Torah is given in love, no question about that. The one who gave us the Torah has limitless love for us. And yet, you know that if you try to raise a child with a lot of love and nothing but love, what's the result? God forbid, a spoiled child. If the child never learns, or is never even exposed to the idea that choices have consequences, and negative choices can have negative repercussions, that child is stilted, incomplete. She or he is not able to function properly as an adult because they don't fully appreciate the implications of their behavior. In this week's Parsha, you have the implications, awful things. We've spent interesting times in years past analyzing the clinical possibilities of all the things the Torah describes in this Parsha, actually this and another one, with fascinating results. Remember that Deuteronomy, which is also called Mishnah Torah, repetition of the law. Now we're finished Vayikra now, so we're finished with Leviticus. We're going to move on to Numbers, Bamidbar this coming week. When we finish that, we'll roll right into Deuteronomy, Devarim. And in that book, Moshe repeats for us, really for the next generation that didn't witness the Exodus and Mount Sinai themselves, but would be going in to settle the land of Israel, all the important stuff he wanted us to keep in mind. So while these curses, or let's call them consequences, of making the wrong choices are detailed here in a series of 49 distinct imprecations, in Devarim, there are 98 separate maledictions, twice the number listed for those who decide to go on their own path and depart from Torah and mitzvahs. The Gemara gets into comparative analysis of the two sets. Are they really exactly the same? The first uttered divinely, the second by Moshe. The first, one's in our parsha, directed to the entire community, while the second set is phrased to address the individual. So, in some sense, maybe the longer set has, to some extent, a lesser degree of harshness. It's a whole conversation in the Gemara in Megillah. But without getting too deep in the weeds on the particulars, let's ask about the value and meaning of curses and blessings, of logical consequences of what we do and what that can mean for us. How do we navigate balance? It seems like sometimes that's all we do, between the figurative Har Gerizim and Har Eval, the two mountains that flank the city of Shechem, where the two halves of the Jewish people will stand across from one another and enact this statement of right and wrong, mandated in Parsha Shoftim, and recorded that it actually took place in the book of Joshua after we actually entered the land. It's noteworthy that in order to appreciate the gravity of this blessing and curses thing, the Jewish people have to be divided into two, 6 tribes on one mountain, 6 on another. Not all of us together in a valley, but half and half, divided opposite one another. That might be a key to understanding the very nature of what curses are and how we bring them upon ourselves. And to get at that, let's look back a bit earlier this week. We were blessed to have a bat mitzvah, wonderful bat mitzvah last Shabbat, so that was our life cycle moment to focus on, thankfully. Last Sunday was Lag BaOmer, 33 days of the Omer, when, as we've understood it, the awful dying of Rabbi Akiva's students ceased. Another point in the circle of life. What's that story? The commentaries in Yevamos Daf Samach Beis, Amud Beis, explained that a terrible plague afflicted Rabbi Akiva's students. Rabbi Akiva is the one rabbi pretty much known to everybody after Moshe Rabbeinu, a vastly influential teacher in our tradition. Rabbi Akiva's scholarship and his personal conduct, not just his piety and holiness, with regard to God, but the care and concern he showed fellow human beings was a model, an education in itself. The Gemara there says that he attracted 24,000 students, 24,000 disciples dedicated to studying and living by his teachings. That is impressive. To say great things is one thing. To have people listen and follow your path and adopt your instruction, that is momentous. Rabbi Akiva is quoted throughout the Mishnah and quite liberally in Pirkei Avos, which we study over the summer. One of the insights for which he's singularly known is a comment on a pasuk, a verse that we read just a few weeks ago in Kedoshim, where it says, "Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha," love another as you love yourself. That's the verse, the text of the verse. Rabbi Akiva emphasized, underscoring this verse, he said, "Ze klal gadol ba-Torah." This is a cardinal principle, or maybe even he meant the cardinal principle of Torah. Love another as you love yourself, with a lot to think about and implications for every moment of our lives. But listen to what happened. The Gemara explains that a plague struck Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim, not a pandemic, not something that affected other students in other yeshivas, just Rabbi Akiva's. This epidemic claimed the lives of virtually all of them. There were only a handful of survivors. Seeking to learn from this awful event in history, which is what we do as Jews, we try to find meaning and instruction on how to go forward from catastrophe. It says, the reason was, lo nahagu kavod ze bazeh. They did not conduct their interpersonal relations with respect or honor or reverence. How on earth could this be? How could it possibly be? We all know at least one Jew, maybe two, who doesn't always behave in the most respectful manner toward others, Nebuch, but what can you do? But here we're talking about yeshiva graduates, not only yeshiva graduates, but the disciples of one of the greatest teachers of our people's history, and we're known for our teachers, and not just any great rabbi, but Rabbi Akiva, whose central teaching is that it's a central teaching of the Torah to love another as you love yourself. How could it be that they would fail to do that to the point of not relating to each other even with respect? Maybe this is the problem. Chesed without gevura. Love without discipline, as we might say, as part of counting the Omer. They did love each other, but it was an unrestrained, undisciplined kind of love. How might that have taken shape? Obviously, no two people's personalities and opinions are ever exactly alike. Take two law professors, two expert surgeons, even if they studied at the same school from the same professors. They'll each have a slightly different take on things, a different angle, different perspective on how they view the world and their work. Rabbi Akiva's students, Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim, certainly, we can assume, digested and internalized the teachings of their master. That's why they're called the students of Rabbi Akiva. Maybe some were more inclined by nature to emotional conduct. Maybe some were more moved by the intellectual questions. Some felt more answerable to love of God. Others more by awe or reverence. Each person had a slightly different take on things, as it always was, and as it continues to be. So how could they not have conducted themselves bakavadik to one another? You see in human relations that when someone becomes convinced of their opinions, their views, their perspective, and their methodology, they naturally come to think they're correct because they've thought about it so much and analyzed their position. Yeah, and they still believe in it. So logically, it must be correct. With the corollary that anyone who does not hold this view, my view, is somehow missing the boat. And we're not talking about are you a Blue Jays fan or an Expos fan. We're not talking are you follow cricket or rugby. We're talking about Devarim ha'omdim berumo shel olam. Issues that are of the highest cosmic order, life and death, and even greater than that. Since they were such faithful disciples of Rabbi Akiva, and they took to heart their teacher's emphasis on you should love another as you love yourself. They could not sleep at night knowing that one of their beloved fellow students was incorrect, was seeing something wrong, was missing the boat on some issue. So out of love, they would correct him. They would show him the light, show him the true path, and not stop until they prevailed upon the other one to see it their way. What greater love is there than convincing someone that they're wrong, explaining them that they're wrong, and helping them get it right? Or so they thought. What happened, quite possibly, is that this devotion to truth above all else, meaning their own individual take on truth, eventually came to not treating each other respectfully. Lo nahagu kavod ze bazeh. Rabbi Akiva's philosophy was also of self-sacrifice. He would say, when will I have the opportunity to fulfill the idea of self-sacrifice, martyrdom? In the end, he was tortured to death by the Romans while saying Shema. We talk about it on Yom Kippur. He was willing to give up his life for his beliefs. That is a kind of self-sacrifice. And yet there's another model of self-sacrifice, which is Abraham. Not to die for your beliefs, to live for your beliefs. By extension, to allow others the space to do that also. Of course, we're talking when it's all l'shem shamayim. We should never be fooled by kosher style or Jewish style. Only the real thing is the real thing. But let's acknowledge that within the real thing, there are many different perspectives, as embodied, exemplified by Rabbi Akiva's students, who in their avoidance of hypocrisy slid over into intolerance. Intolerance, not being tolerant of each other. This is a serious potential stumbling block for scholars, for righteous people, for rabbis, for teachers. The idea is to bring out the best in the other, not to convince or to coerce compliance. So in keeping with this parsha and Shabbat Chazak, how do we turn the curses into blessings? How can we move from a terribly divisive year among the Jewish people? And now we've moved even to an even worse year of unity now, with us huddled together against adversaries on the battlefields and the skies in Israel, and the campuses, the media, the streets, and the government, and people's opinions here and elsewhere. It's an interesting debate in Jewish thought whether love is stronger or fear is stronger, as a motivator, as a bond, as an impetus for change. 5 weeks ago, during Pesach, we read Shir Hashirim, Song of Songs, which is really a love poem about the Jewish people and God. And we read there, Ki aza kamaves ahava, love which is as strong as death. This is more than the romantic love that the movies and popular culture talks about. This is commitment. We stick together. We stand with one another. We stand together. Thankfully, that's what we saw a couple of weeks ago at the community-wide Yom HaAtzmaut celebration. That's what we're seeing with our brothers and sisters in Israel who support each other, have each other's backs, who are in it together. If only our people in North America could make a similar commitment. To our sorrow, some of us here are too much committed to our own version of the truth and convincing others what we feel they should be doing to embrace others in their hour of need. But it is a Shabbat of strength, and it is a Shabbos of turning curses into blessings. The world is cursing us, looking around for new methods, new language, new ways to curse us. We should only hear the blessings. The day will come when they recognize the error of their ways, but we, frankly, don't have time to wait for them to figure it out. Our first duty, our first call, is to rectify the mistake of Rabbi Akiva's students and to be, now, noheg kavod ze bazeh, to conduct our relations with our fellow Jew with honor, respect, reverence, and civility. It's not to say we have to agree on every point, but that doesn't have to make our love and our respect conditional on others accepting our points of view. Ki aza kamaves ahava, perhaps in our case we'll come to understand that love is stronger than death, and our love for each other with discipline will be what gives us all renewed and strengthened life. May it be in a way of only blessing, only peace, only good health, and while we're asking, may it be sooner, much rather than later. A good Shabbos.